Game of Thrones and the War of the Roses. What connects them? Game of Thrones has become a real breakthrough in the world of TV series. It is one of the highest rated projects, which has received 386 awards out of 1018 nominations. The show also holds 10 world records in the Guinness Book of Records, including the most pirated TV series. The torrent freight monitoring site declared Game of Thrones the most illegally downloaded TV series for 5 consecutive years, and the largest TV drama in terms of broadcast in the number of countries. The second episode of the 5th season was synchronously shown in 173 different countries and territories. George Martin has never hidden the fact that the Yorks and the Lancasters, who unleashed the 30-year war for the throne, served as prototypes for the Lannisters and the Starks, and the War of the Roses itself has often inspired him when he was writing his cycle. Of course, there are no direct references in the books, but some motives can be traced. Today, together with you, we will go through the key events of the War of the Two Roses and draw parallels between the Game of Thrones in Westeros and the Game of Thrones in 15th century England. Geographical similarity first. Let's take a look at the map of Westeros and compare it to the inverted map of the medieval British Isles. What do you call trying to find 10 differences? By the end of the 7th century, the Anglo-Saxons had founded 7 kingdoms on the British island, which eventually united into one by the 9th century. Does that sound familiar? Let's go further and descend from the heavens to the earth. The Hadrian's Wall comes into view, a 117 kilometers long defensive fortification that stretches from east to west across northern England. This wall was built by the Romans in the early 2nd century and served to protect against raids by the northern peoples of the Picts and Brigantes. Of course, it was not built of ice like the wall in Game of Thrones, and was only 117 kilometers long. But the Picts were not White Walkers either. But let's return to our roses. The first period of the war, the struggle for power between the two aristocratic houses, tore the country apart for 30 years, from 1455 to 1485. You have probably already guessed whose reflections the Lancasters and the Yorks found in Martin's saga. If not, here is a brief description of these two houses. The Lancasters were a cadet branch of the Plantagenet royal family. This was a very wealthy and ambitious house that had been striving for power by all means since its inception. The Lancastrian lands were mostly located in the west of the country in Lancashire, Gloucestershire and Wales. Their symbol was the red rose. The Yorks, like the Lancasters, were a junior cadet branch of the Plantagenets. In the eyes of contemporaries, the Yorks were a kind of harsh northerners living by their or wild laws on the outskirts of civilization, and indeed, Yorkshire was the northern outpost of the kingdom, and its upper border just ran along Hadrian's Wall. The symbol of the Yorks was the white rose. The confrontation between the different dynastic branches at the court of the English king began long before the War of the Roses. The fact is that already under King Edward III in the 14th century, the royal dynasty had multiplied like rabbits, and of course each uncle, brother and maternal grandmother's nephew tried to grab a piece of the royal pie, bigger and sweeter, not disdaining to set a trap, slander or deceive other competing hangers-on. George Martin has never hidden the fact that he was more inspired by this period of British history in creating the first books of the saga. In one interview he said, "If a man has 5 brothers and sisters in one generation, and each of them has children, in a couple of generations there will be, say, 30 possible heirs. The struggle for the inheritance will turn into a conflict. After all, this is what served as the beginning of the War of the Red and White Roses, an excess of candidates for the throne. Having many heirs is as bad as having none, which is what happened to Henry VI." Continued in the next part. If you enjoy our videos, please subscribe to the channel, like, and leave a comment if you'd like.